I want to welcome everybody to our next in the BCI series of webinars. This one, which I'm very excited to hear what they're going to say today, is about African perspectives on cybersecurity in light of the pandemic. So not only what's going on in the regions that they represent, but also how the pandemic has affected what they've been working on. Just a little bit about BCI. Base Cybersecurity Institute was founded in honor of Becky Bass, who was a wonderful visionary in cybersecurity and a mentor to me as well. And we put together this organization to bring together people from industry and academia and government to really make the cybersecurity better, to make our world safer by making systems more secure. And this webinar has been put on by our speakers who are all volunteering today, and our volunteers who work behind the scenes to get them our presentations and messaging and all of this stuff organized. So I really want to thank those people, because we're all volunteers in this, and it really takes a community to put together a series like this. Today we're going to take a look at a regional perspective on cybersecurity in the pandemic, and I've been asked, what makes different perspectives valuable? And it's interesting to me because it's one of the things I deal with on a daily basis. We all live in a world that's very much shaped by our own experiences, our own cultural backgrounds, and really our assumptions about the world. And we can't interact with the world without relying on those assumptions. When you go to the grocery store, you expect to be able to find food. But one of the things that happens during a pandemic is fundamental things change in our society. We can no longer have a dinner party, for example. And so that change in assumptions is very disruptive, but it allows us to see the underlying fabric of what's going on. And from a security point of view, this is something that we do every day. When we're asked to test a new application or a new software package, we have to take the perspective not of what is this application built to do. Is it a self-driving car? It's built to drive on the road. We have to take the perspective, what can it do that it may not have been intended to do? And some of those are obvious, like a self-driving car could be asked to go to an incorrect location. And some of those aren't as obvious, where technology has advanced enough that we can see sound through a camera. And so you can use a camera that has very high resolution to actually see sound waves and eavesdrops on conversations. And that changes in assumptions can be very disruptive. And the easiest and nicest way to understand our assumptions in the world is to talk to other people, to find out what they see the world as, to look at the world through their perspective and their lens. And it allows us to see the world differently and to learn from that and to grow. And so I would like to turn it over to Robert now, and am very excited to hear about the difference in perspectives from Africa.
Thank you, and it's a pleasure to be here. Let's see, I'm going to do a quick scan of all the attendees. Howard, good to see you. Marisa, Rebecca, Rebecca Mercury, always good to see you. So everybody, why are we doing an Africa-oriented cybersecurity webinar today? Simple. Here's why. Let me share my screen. Africa is the second largest continent on Earth. People are not very good at geography. When they look at those flat maps, they forget this, but that's how big Africa is. You can put into Africa all of the lower 48 United States, China, India, Japan, Great Britain, and all of the European Union into Africa with space left over. And it's interesting that all those different countries can fit in there, because Africa is also the repository, probably the greatest repository of linguistic, genetic, ecological, and ethnological diversity on the planet. It's just an extraordinary collection of peoples and languages and cultures. There are 4 Africas, North and South, and I don't have connections in either one. You know, you can draw an X through this drawing and, you know, top and a bottom, a left and a right. But we do have today people from the left side, West Africa, and 2 speakers from the right side, East Africa, talking about cybersecurity. Why is Africa important to Americans and the world in general? Why should they pay attention to it? Well, because by the year 2050, by mid-century, 2 out of 3, 2/3 of the young people on planet Earth will be African. And if your enterprise is thinking about the future, it needs to think about Africa for that reason and for one other reason. The African continent is the one remaining place on Earth that could possibly host double-digit economic growth for decades and decades if they play their cards right and everything works out. There's a common expression over there, inshallah, which means God willing. Everybody uses it no matter what their ethnicity. But if things work out, Africa is the place to invest, the place where an enterprise must look to if it needs double-digit growth to keep those political promises that have been made to retirees or citizens. So it's where more than half the young people will be, and it's where the future strong economic growth will be. So if you as an enterprise are not paying attention to Africa, you in essence have decided you're not going to be in business in 30 years' time. So that's why it's worth paying attention. That's why I work there. It has been a joyful experience for me. I've been going there for 5 years, and I've met these wonderful people, several of whom are on camera. So I'd like to introduce, in what I see, under my icon is Desiree Bonts, who is an expatriate from Burkina Faso. So he's part of the Burkinan diaspora, now living here in the United States. He's a francophone, but speaks very good English. And then underneath him, I have my 2 colleagues from East Africa, Alan Obalim, who's the ICT czar of the Petroleum Authority of Uganda, and you can read his bio in the introduction that went out by email last week. And my genius friend David Malinde, who he was trained as an engineer, but he's so much more. He's a Renaissance man, and someday, if Asilomar Microcomputer Workshop ever goes live again, you're going to meet them. So you've already met Desiree, actually, at the Asilomar workshop, but I hope to bring David over for what we call benchmarking travel. So with that, I will stop my share. And Alan, I would like to start with you. If you could run your slides, please.
Okay, Robert, thank you once again, and to the attendees. It's an honor and an opportunity to share with you experience. Also for the African perspective, I'll just share my experience. And that's the presentation I'll be relaying. Like Robert said, Alan Obalim is my name, and I'll be presenting the impact of COVID-19 on cybersecurity. And my case study will be Uganda, because that's where I'm based and that's where I'm from. And so without further ado, that's my agenda. That's the agenda uh, that the discussion will encompass around. There will be a perspective to the digital threat, and then of course we'll look at how it has affected technology, mostly with the infrastructure. We'll look at the users. Of course, users make fit into the cybersecurity chain. And so this goes without saying. And so we'll look at the attack vectors that users tend to fall prey into. And then, of course, we'll look at the business, how this pandemic really has affected businesses and how businesses are trying to adapt to the new normal. In Uganda, it may not be so different from what's out there because this whole pandemic has caused both negative and positive effects. The impact has been both positive and negative. It has ravaged all lifestyles. It has actually touched every spectrum of life. That's economically, socially, I mean, academically, etc. Just name it. And so, in this introduction of mine, I just say that COVID brings an elevated challenge with impacts. Those could be either threats or opportunities. And when you compare this to the past, this is a global. This actually went so global that it has affected everyone, regardless of their location, race, ethnicity, religion, etc. And of course, you notice that whenever a new crisis emerges, a number of criminal actors use it as an opportunity, it's an occasion to exploit unsuspecting victims in times of fear, uncertainty, and doubt, which the pandemic has actually brought into. Considering this context, of course, criminals really capitalize on such as an opportunity. And these exploits tend to take multiple forms, from physical to the digital world. At the end of the day, really, this points to the three tenets of cybersecurity, which is confidentiality, integrity, and availability. And so my discussions will be around this, and this is just a perspective of a digital threat. This is a snip into a cyber hit that was taken in a single 24-hour period. That was between April 14th to April 15th, 2020. And this snapshot or this visual was taken from the United Nations Drug and United Nations Drug and Crime. It was just Cyber Threat Analysis Center. And of course, you'll notice that there was lots of spam emails containing Corona or COVID in the subject line. That was the highest spiking. And then, of course, there was use of unique IP addresses that were used to send such emails. Of course, we'll look at some of the cyber squats whereby new domains were created, and once resolved, you tend to get several types of IP addresses. Then, of course, you have unique domains that were used to send out some of these emails, and then emails that were found to send infected attachments, and all these play out in form of malware. This is just a perspective. Since Uganda subscribes to the UN, I thought I should bring this to literally drive the discussion to where we're headed to. Now, I'll start with technology. Well, because when this pandemic really hit Uganda, there was a declaration by our head of state, and there was a lockdown. And in the lockdown situation, most places of work closed, both government and private sector closed down. So people were called to work from home. Now that meant actually accessing your company resources or your office resources through some sorts of VPN. Of course, there was review of firewall configurations and etc. But this was an opportunity whereby really the infrastructure was tested in terms of performance, whereby you have lots of people actually, you have a remote workforce trying to access the systems or resources remotely. And this came in form of load, stress, and capacity tests. And for my place of work where I work currently, this is something that was an opportunity for us to really strengthen our infrastructure to to test whether our infrastructure is ready to support a massive group of people working remotely as opposed to being physically on the campus network, because it's different when you're working from out of the network. And of course, it also helped us like largely closely monitor the health. That means the security of the infrastructure. Is it okay? Are you having malicious traffic coming in and etc.? And then of course, there was a review, of course, on what kind of computers to block. And at a point like this, non-company systems were actually blocked from accessing the network. You needed to have probably a system whereby you have a device policy that has been downloaded into your phone, or if it's a company granted PC or computer system. And then of course, things like disabling split tunnelings. These were things that were undertaken whereby you notice that similar networks couldn't be accessed using different networks. So it had to be very explicit. And then, of course, still in the infrastructure, there was a huge take on endpoint security solutions. And this ideally is to protect the end users, to protect end nodes. Because now you notice that people are operating remotely. So you don't know what's happening, what they're downloading, because they're using different networks to access resources from office. And therefore, you don't know, you can't easily know what has gotten into their PCs. And so in a situation that they get connected into the company network, there has to be some sort of leveling whereby their PCs are quarantined and brought to a level of update, and etc. is brought back to the network. And so these are things that we've actually seen, and this is what the pandemic has actually opened our eyes to doing so much. In regards to business continuity, because the business really has to carry on, and a disaster recovery plan, this is something that was not planned for. And so you'll notice there's been lots of developments of business impact assessments or analysis, whereby you weigh the critical applications that should never be good, that should never be affected regardless of a disaster. And then of course, still reviewing of the tolerable downtime, this still falls under the BIAs. And then of course, we've seen a lot of organizations, both small, medium, and large, even government entities, adopt a lot of disaster recovery services. And this has been in the form of either cold, warm, or hot, depending on the business that has been assessed. And then, of course, we've also seen lots of reciprocal agreements coming into play. And then this lockdown really has caused a lot of digital transformation, whereby you have a number of businesses surviving on ICT because they really have to keep meeting their objectives based on their missions. There's also been an adoption of a lot of cloud solutions and containerization technologies. And these we've seen in form of software as a service, hardware as a service, and etc. We've seen lots of, like for the application development team, like my colleague David is into applications development. There's been lots of adoption of technologies like the Kubernetes, the Dockers, because of the portability and the orchestration that falls within the operating system. So it's very easy to migrate across platforms. So some of these have really, because of the pandemic, really, you need to serve your target audience, you need to serve your customers. And so the pandemic actually brought light into some of these technologies to be adopted. And then of course you have virtual collaboration platforms being taken so seriously. In the past, traditionally, of course, in Uganda, we prefer physical meetings whereby you meet in a boardroom and discuss issues on one-on-one. But you find that this situation presents the use of the use of virtual platforms like the Zoom application, the Google Meeting apps, and the Teams and etc. Just name it. But besides some of these, we've noticed that, of course, to ensure a good working environment, we try to place in some controls that would enable some of these services be acquired or be utilized. And so we encourage our users to use strong passwords, both complex and alphanumeric. We also adopted the NIST password passphrases. That was one of the standards that came out in their papers. And of course, the adoption of multi-factor authentications, what you know, who you are, and what you have based on those models, really. And this is something we've tried to also establish in our bespoke application development, and of course, promoting computer usage policies, and then of course, preventive services, just to test whether your network is good enough, like performing some sorts of red team, blue teaming, or purple teaming engagements. And of course, vulnerability checks, just to check for loopholes. Is your system having this loophole, and etc. So this pandemic actually presented some of these opportunities, and it's what we've been doing. So when I come to users being the weakest link on any cybersecurity chain, we've noticed a lot of social engineering ploys, and these have fallen in line with phishing, whaling, and pharming attacks. And so lots of these have come through emails, whereby with one intention, definitely, to lure you into divulging a lot of information about you, more so personally identifiable information that could be like your password, your credit card details, and etc. And we've tried to, of course, tell our users, in a situation that you get this kind of email, be aware of some of the things. They're too good to be true. They could be money related. In this situation, they were Corona or COVID related. They had that kind of subject in the themes. And these are things that we try to share with our users to be cognizant about. And then, of course, password spraying goes without saying. You'll notice common passwords whereby people try to use common passwords or repeated passwords to access a given service. And we try to also bring in the use of password managers to where you can save your password, and it informs you whether your password has been compromised, and then you can be able to change. But this has actually seen a downplay in the use of actually multi-factor authentication as one way of mitigating this. And then, of course, virtual conferencing, whereby you have platforms. I think when Zoom just started, when the pandemic was at its peak, there were lots of Zoom bombs and etc. And some of these platforms lack the end-to-end encryption, whereby you would have actually some sorts of man in the middle, and of course, lack of the video conferencing etiquettes, whereby you have people participating in a meeting, not following the correct etiquette. And so this has actually taught us on how to operate or to deal virtually with people in an engagement or a meeting. And then because people are working from home because of the lockdown, you find lots of people procured MiFi routers or mobile wireless fidelity routers, and just, of course, to be able to work remotely. Now you'll notice some of these routers lack some sorts of firmware update. Some of them had default usernames and passwords, and you find as long as the end user can get an internet service, they wouldn't mind changing the default login credentials. And if someone is to do a word driving, you never know, they could actually just try that out of a dictionary attack, and before you know it, people are locked out of their own routers. And these are some of the things that we try to, of course, share with our users. And then, of course, we've also seen the rise of malicious domains, people impersonating official websites, and that's more like cyber squats. And so you'll notice lots of sinkhole servers coming into play. These are DNS servers that are literally set up to just collect some sort of information. I would say quite similar to a honeypot or a honeynet. Some of these have really come up during this period. And of course, you've seen the rise of deep webs and darknet activities, whereby you have people saying, we have this medication to the coronavirus, and if it's being sold at this amount of money, and and all these have come out as malicious domains. And of course, the rise of crypto miners goes without saying, because you find a lot of people coming in saying we are helping, we are volunteering to support this pandemic, the crisis, and we are requesting for computer resources to use to help us reach the different the different, how can I say, for lack of a better word, the audiences. And these are some of the challenges that arose during this situation in Uganda. Of course, there's been malware spreading, and this is as a result of, it could be through a phishing mail, but most of these are coming through these mal-crafted domains. And of course, these malwares have taken shapes in form of ransomware or the botnets. And this again ties back to the infrastructure, whereby we try to deploy a number of endpoint security solutions to at least protect the infrastructure to a given level that is acceptable. And then most of these exploits, most of these malwares, once they get into the network, you notice they come with one reason, or either to exploit the weakness of a given system. That could either be a buffer or in form of a 0 day, but good enough we've not experienced the buffers in 0 days in our setting. But I just thought I should just share this, because these normally are attributes of malware. And then of course, information and disinformation. This is something that was so viral in our context in Uganda. An example is this snapshot right here, whereby you have coronavirus cases reported as 1,069, and then recovered cases as 1,071. Now, this is misleading. This is misinformation. And so these are things that have actually run out, mostly on social media platforms, and something I'm going to discuss in my next slide. We've seen a huge spike in social media usage, and this is literally a graph taken from the gsstatcounter.com, and it shows that there was a lot of adoption in the use of social media, and a lot of this misinformation, cyberbullying attacks, were platforms. Were used. All social media was used to leverage some of those attacks. And of course, we've seen a lot of employment loss during this period, because businesses shut down because of the lockdown. They couldn't sustain, and people losing jobs and then becoming cyberbullies, cyber stalks. And you'll notice that many of them started to use the internet or social media to start attacking probably their employers that maybe threw them out of the job. And these have been on the rise, these have been on the increase. Then, of course, the facing of government websites, and which, of course, lead to denial of services. And this has been seen majorly largely with the frontline organizations, because some of these organizations keep reporting maybe some sort of unrelated data that leads to maybe a prolonged lockdown. And of course, the citizenry normally get so bored with staying at home. And so, because they lack what to do, they start to play with government websites. And before you know it, some of them are defaced. And then there's a service denial, really. My last slide is literally, my second last slide is on the business. You'll notice we are getting into the new normal. And the situation now is, how do businesses respond to this pandemic? Of course, we notice the negatives, and there's been lots of recessions. There's a decline in economic activities in Uganda. And of course, budgets for the physical period is not utilized. For lack of a better word, some of them have been squandered in the name of offering a service. And yeah, I try to list some processes that could help businesses. What we try to adopt at my place of work is that we are trying to develop a robust or improve a robust business continuity plan. And then, of course, establishing an incident response team, a team that will always respond quickly to incidents in terms of supporting the users, the customers, and entities. And of course, evaluating the impact of the incident while people are working remotely. And of course, we try to underline on a number of frameworks like the ITIL, which is the service-oriented framework. And then, of course, we've also tried to bring in a number of legal requirements into play. Now, in Uganda, we have the Computer Misuse Act, which actually regulates our cyberspace. And then, of course, you have the Data Protection and Privacy Act, which is synonymous to the GDPR, and it's something that we use to protect data for people so that it's not compromised. And of course, we have lots of companies getting into cyber insurance, whereby insurance companies come and literally come in with a cover or a plan to ensure your business against cyber threats or cyber attacks. And now this is something that is coming into the market so much, and it's something that we are seeing organizations in Uganda adopt. And then, of course, the law enforcement contacts. This now comes to the police. In a situation that you have a cyber incident, like someone using a computer to carry out a malicious act, of course, that's against the Computer Misuse Act. Definitely, the person will be taken on by the law enforcement contacts. And then, of course, there's been an increase in public relations, and a lot of communication strategies being adopted, being improved to align with the situation at the moment. How do you communicate to the public in a crisis? How do you communicate to the right audience in a situation like what Corona presented? Then, of course, it goes without saying that the businesses are really becoming early majorities while adopting technologies as enablers, because it's very clear, and it's more black and white that technology is an enabler. It's driving any business in this moment, in this season. Technology is what's driving the business. And so you're seeing a lot of SMEs, lots of business, lots of governments actually getting into this group of innovators. And then, of course, there's lots of innovations and creativity in different business models. And many organizations are developing new ways of doing things. It's no longer business as usual. It's a new way of doing things. And of course, here we are seeing literally technology taking a lead in this, because you achieve a lot, it's efficient, you achieve a lot, and then you achieve your objectives. And then, of course, last but not least, there's lots of small offices and home offices that have emerged, and this has increased the remote workforce. And this is what businesses are really into. Now in Uganda, the lockdown is being eased. The COVID regulations are being eased slowly. And so you find there's still a lot of people working from home, while a few people are working from office. And so this remote workforce is something that has actually come in during this period, and I don't see this stopping. Actually, I see it increasing, because people tend to say their output while working out of an office environment, they yield more. There's a last slide that I'll ask Robert to play for us. This is just a video snippet. It welcomes you out of this presentation. It's something that we picked from the United Arab Emirates. It's more of an awareness to phishing and social media ploys. Please, Robert, you could share with the audience.
Alan, if you'll stop share,
yeah,
then I will start.
Thank you.
Hakuna Matata.
Yo, man.
Hello?
Can you help me, man?
Sure. How can I help you?
My account just got wiped.
You must be joking.
I don't know how I let this happen.
By who?
Some guy pretending to be you, you know? Man, I don't know what to do.
It wasn't me.
Oh,
Robert,
I'll follow email me
I wish
dear
you could play
customer.
the video as well.
Excuse me?
I wish you could play the video as well.
I shared screen.
No, you-
Oh, sorry. Wrong one. Let's try that. Sorry.
An issue. You need to send us your
Okay.
account number and we'll resolve it for you. How could I be so clumsy and click on that odious thing? All this time he was after my password and username. I'll only got the freezer access to your data. Hackers on the process always lying in the waiter. You better watch your back, don't fall for the beta. Let's review the situation that you're caught up in. To be a safe player, you have to know how to play. If you say a moment, don't give them time of day. Never listen to a word when they say. And if they claim that they're the bank, tell them no way. But he sent me a reminder. It wasn't me. Messaged me on WhatsApp. It wasn't me. He even called me in the shower. It wasn't me. He told me I won the lottery. It wasn't me. He asked me for my password. It wasn't me. To verify my account number. It wasn't me. I even sent him a picture. It wasn't me. He blew my account and it was over. Our fellow email me, dear customer, there seems to be a payment issue. You need to send us your account number and we'll resolve it for you. How could I be so clumsy and click on that obvious link? All this time he was after my password and username. It wasn't me. It wasn't me. It wasn't me. It wasn't me.
So
yeah, so that has been my presentation. Thank you once again for the opportunity. I'm very honored to present uh, to people like you. And Robert, once again, I'm very grateful. Thank you so much.
thank you for it's 9:30 at night in Entebbe, Uganda, on the shores of Lake Victoria. And my good friend Alan stayed late on the job for a reliable landline, hard link, to support this. I appreciate your sacrifice, Alan. So Desiree, you're next. Do you want me to run your slides from my desktop?
Yes, please. Thank you so much, Robert. Hi, everyone. And I'm very honored to be here with you. I did appreciate the past presentation. And I think this is going to kind of complement that, since this is a perspective from the West. So next slide, please. So what we're going to look at is basically the landscape, what has been happening in the cybersecurity space. And we're going to look at the most prominent, let's say, domains that have been in a rise due to the COVID-19, which is social media and disinformation. We will look at some of the causes and motivation, and then I will talk about a report that was commissioned by the African Union. That was from 2016, but it's it's one of the few comprehensive report that we have out there. And there is also a Mimecast report on the first 100 days of COVID-19 that goes like week by week. And finally, some good news and final thoughts. Next slide, please. So the landscape is mostly about, you see the attack vectors that are being social media, fake news, email threats, cyberbullying, and many of these you've already seen in my friend's presentation. So right now we have been looking at a lot of rise in people trying to sell some cure for COVID-19, people trying to get government websites to be defaced, and also many people have been working now from home. And what is actually true for West Africa is that a lot of the internet connection is being provided by mobile providers, because the landlines are not that evolved, And the companies that are being in West Africa, it's mainly MTN, Orange, and some other companies that are like privately or national. And many of them do not have the resources to actually expand, let's say, on notice, because COVID-19 was not foreseen in many of the African countries. And because of that, people have had to choose between trying to get solutions for the workers to work remotely or invest in cybersecurity. So it was not possible to do both at the same time. So we've seen a lot of rise in this domain. Next slide, please. So for social media, as I was talking, basically we've had a lot of sharing of fake information, right? Using Facebook, WhatsApp, and also a lot of fake offering. And if you take the fact that many people have lost not only their jobs, if they had a job, but their revenue stream. So someone that was out on the street that was making a living by selling some goods, because of a lockdown, now he has to stay inside. So basically, people are spending their time being online, and being online, people are kind of going through whatever they can find, and we've had a lot of fake applications, a lot of information trying to lure people into some offering, trying to get people to buy some goods that were not actually, from legitimate providers. And also, if people using browsers and using computers, I've seen a lot of plugin that would, let's say, help them optimize their connectivity, their connection, but actually it was really to hijack and try to get information from their computers, from their smartphones. And one thing that we will be talking next is that a lot of software in West Africa is not licensed, right? So many people have had versions that are installed and that have not been updated for the last like 5, 6, 10 years. So basically, there were not any security updates to this software, and there are some known vulnerability that have been known. And this also has seen a rise because it presented an opportunity and for bad actors to try to take this into account. Next slide, please. So in the case of disinformation, this is the one that I've seen myself in so many platforms. So the first one in French, it says that the mask that you are wearing, basically you can wear it also, on the other side. And they are saying that if you are healthy, so the white side should be out. And if you have COVID-19, the blue side should be out. I mean, it's totally ridiculous, but people believe in that because it looks like a legit information, and the wording of it is also very clever. So it's impressive. I didn't know that blue and white sides meant anything differently, and then you have the drawing. So this has been circulating in WhatsApp, on Facebook, and also from like person to person. So the other one is like, so they're saying that the Nigerian government has found a cure for COVID-19, and they are going to let everyone use it. So that's something that has been impersonating the Al Jazeera news, so which people actually trust a lot in that side of Africa. But this has been proven false, and there is one website that is called africacheck.org. That is a very good website, and that allows you to go there and check if information that has been reported is true or not. So this is very good because it is centered on Africa, and it has a lot of information that we're seeing on WhatsApp and some other media that Google or Facebook, are not aware of. Next slide, please. So on that website, on Africa Report, so they say that the 5 tips to kind of spot fake news is to ask yourself who wrote it. Can you verify the claims? Does it make you scared or angry? And does it include shocking pictures, video, or audio? And also ask yourself, are you sure this is not a hoax? So they have different media for that, so you can like read about it. They also have some podcasts, and what I like is what's crap on WhatsApp. So this is sometimes a 1 hour weekly podcast that you can listen while you are in your car or you're not doing anything. So they have a lot of updated information, and that is the thing I use when I want to actually tell people that the info that they are sharing is not accurate, and I always ask them to go and check it there. Next slide, please. So now we're going to look at what are the general causes of the cybersecurity, cyber crimes, let's say, that are happening in West Africa. So we know that we have vulnerable systems because, as I said, they are not being patched often. Internet connectivity is not always there when we need it. And also there is a lack of cybersecurity practices. So from the previous presentation, you saw that there is a rise in trying to combat that. There are laws, there are practices, there are policies being put in place. But in countries like Burkina Faso, Cote d'Ivoire, Mali, Niger, this is not yet totally being taken very seriously. So in countries like Senegal, Cameroon, and some other, yes, this is more advanced, but it is going to take time before we get there. So in 2017, 90% of software in Libya was not licensed. So which means that almost software being used by government, by companies, by individual was prone to attack vectors that could use like CVEs and known vulnerabilities that people have exploited in some other countries because the software is not being made right in Africa, right? So that means that the vulnerabilities that are being disclosed and fixed in Europe, in America, can now be used like pretty much anytime in many countries in West Africa. So the budget for cybersecurity sometimes is low. In Burkina Faso, I know for a fact because I have a friend and a business partner that has a company called Cybertex, and he provides cybersecurity for Cote d'Ivoire, Burkina, and Senegal. And it's very hard to convince a company to invest. So basically what happens is that if they have been in attack, it's much easier for a company to say, okay, this is real. This has cost us that much amount of money. If we invest like half of what we lost, we can prevent future attacks. So that is sometimes what is happening. And because of COVID-19, this has completely taken the companies by surprise because there have been a big rise in demand for remote working solutions, for collaboration tools, and also to try to get information that would not have been important before COVID-19. Now people needed access to that. So cybersecurity, I think it's going to see a rise in use and application after COVID-19. So in West Africa, you have a lot of first-time users, and they are not aware of the risk that this is posing. And as I said, many people now are not employed. They are home, and because of that, they're spending more time also on the computers and the internet. And also, one thing that people usually do not take into account is that most of cybersecurity products and policies are in English. If you don't speak English, it's very hard for you to understand and to implement that. Next slide, please. So one more cause is that there will be an estimated shortage of 100,000 cybersecurity personnel in 2020. And one funny story is that in Cameroon, 2016, the government launched a cybersecurity skill development program because they saw a big rise in cyber crimes. And before they enacted the implementation, they said, oh, wait a minute, maybe those people that we're going to train are going to be now, the people who will commit the crimes. So they kind of stopped the program altogether. And that is due because of a lack of communication, and also, and so that's something we need also to address. So regulatory. So from the previous presentation, as you saw, there was a lot of effort in that sense. I know that the World Bank has founded some studies of the cybersecurity, of the national cybersecurity uh, program and strategies. And my friend that is from Cybertech has worked with 8 countries in West Africa to try to make sure that the countries have a plan. And then the next step would be how to implement this plan. So this is going to be really, really good. And now it's no longer 30 country lacked over the 54, but this is going to see a big rise because also of COVID-19. So the cyber criminal are moving from one country to another. So if you are in Nigeria, you can target people in Burkina Faso, in Mali. So this is going to be, it's not only that we need regulatory policies in country, we need also in the region, and we also need the African Union to also work on that. Next slide, please. So the motivation, Africa is seeing a high degree of a move to the digital economy. So, and from the numbers we see here, Nigeria in 2017, there was $600 million estimated cost of cybercrime. So it is paying, and whenever it's paying, we know we have people who will be motivated to work to get that. So basically, it's a game of cat and mouse. So people are becoming very sophisticated in trying to fend off the attackers, and the attackers also are being very smart about that. So because money is being lost, money will be spent to address that. Next slide, please. So this is again the report I was talking about. So it was done by Symantec, and on behalf of the African Union Commission, and it's from 2016, but it's the only report that the African Union Commission has done actually about that. And we see that there are a number of classes of malicious activities, and this is not only attacks that are targeting Africa, but attacks also from Africa to other countries or to Europe. So that's also important to know. Next slide, please. An example is if you see malware targeting Africa in 2016, so you have a lot of Trojan and also known vulnerabilities that are being used, and also attacks that are being from Africa. It's also a lot of attacks that are happening. Next slide, please. So this is the Mimecast report for the first 100 days of COVID-19. So a lot of JavaScript-based phishing, emails, and a lot of malware. The Emotet that was specific to COVID-19, and we've seen this rising starting from February 22, 2020, and also a lot of viruses being embedded in files, in WAR files, and like zip files that are being downloaded. So most computers in West Africa our PCs. So people are downloading .exe files, but like archived, and a lot of those repositories are not signed or anything. So it's very easy to embed some malware in that. And we saw that basically Africa is being targeted. So this is a report that is very interesting to go through, because it goes for the first 100 days, and it's very interesting to see that Africa has been as much targeted as any other region on the planet. Next slide, please. So there are some good news. It's not all bad news. So the good news is that in many countries in West Africa, there were a lot of efforts that were ongoing to improve the internet connectivity before COVID-19. So COVID-19 came and they just made things accelerate even faster. So that in a sense is a good news. So in 2019, a very small change in the routing design in the internet exchange point for Burkina Faso had the effect of going from 0.5 gig to 6 gig just overnight. So that was a big upgrade, because the whole country, that is for the whole country, right? So people started to able to use more internet, to use like cloud services, but also Facebook, of course, YouTube and all. But that's it means that that was done by the Internet Society. So they went to Burkina Faso. They had a 3-day training with people from Burkina Faso, and they worked with them to improve that. So that's something I'm very happy, I'm very proud about. And this slide, as you see, is that in Burkina Faso, traffic has not changed much, because this is from July 2019 to July 2020, right? So it means that the country is not like Uganda, because we are not nowhere near the internet adoption as you guys are, but it means that the traffic has not also dropped. So that's a good thing. Next slide, please. So main one, that is in Nigeria, because of COVID-19, is accelerating its plans to add a data node in Ghana. And they said that by the first quarter of 2021, they will have that node available, and also they will build another one in Burkina Faso. So that's some really good news. So the other thing is the traffic improvements. We talked about the one we saw in Burkina Faso. Can also happen if you use locality as a metric. So Nigeria from 2012 to 2020 were able to improve also their internet traffic, like pretty much, I think 40 times, right? And by just making sure that the services are local. So like DNS resolution, content caching. So this is something that is very important. I wrote a paper for NIST in 2014, and we looked at the internet connectivity in Africa. I hope that my friend David and Alan will agree, but I mean, it's changing. The majority of African countries are dependent on just a few other countries for intra-continental internet access. So we looked at the pairwise comparison, because most papers until then were looking at Africa. They were saying, like, if you take Egypt, Morocco, South Africa, you have like 75% of the traffic. So just look at those countries, and the rest doesn't matter. But we looked at every single country, and we looked at the evolution from 2010 to 2014, and we saw that one way to improve the internet connectivity in Africa is to actually make the links in countries be stronger. And if you do that, you also increase locality, because a country does not need to go through California to get its DNS result. And we checked a ping from Cote d'Ivoire, so Abidjan to Burkina Faso. and we had 32 hubs. And to go from Washington, D.C. to the space station, it's less than 7 hubs. So there is no reason that we cannot do better. Next slide, please. So that's about the final slide. So the news about COVID-19 and the cybersecurity space in West Africa is that most countries, are saying that it's so important because you are relying on internet for economy, for education, for pretty much anything. So this is the time to rebuild better. This is the time, for enterprise resilience, for teleworking solutions. Burkina Faso is working on a unique ID that they will make also available via electronic transactions. So this is going to also help. So cloud services, secure collaboration tools, cybersecurity policies to actually address the problems that we saw, with this pandemic. Bring your own device policies. This is going to need a lot of work in that. We need also to work on cyber operations. So be able to monitor a company network to see what's going on, to be able to respond if there is an incident, and also to learn from the lessons from this pandemic. Next slide, please. So the last slide is about the fact that the McAfee Labs released a report in July 2020, and I've gone through it. There is not a single mention about Africa. And this means that the work that David and Alan and all of you is doing is so important, because we need to work on the cybersecurity status, the cybersecurity space, what is happening in Africa, how things are going, because the big companies are not interested right now. And as my friend Robert said in the beginning, Africa is where things are going to happen. So there is a tremendous potential for growth, be it for economy, for internet usage, for people. So it needs to be taken account, and it's up to us to make those companies take this into account. Next slide, maybe. Let's see. Yeah. So the attack surface because of COVID-19 has increased, absolutely. Companies are being forced to choose between investing in remote work platform or cybersecurity, and of course, they didn't choose cybersecurity. Company revenue stream have dried up pretty much in West Africa, so there is no money to invest in cybersecurity. But the good news is that we can rebuild better. We have, the tools and the means for that. And thank you, everyone. And I hope that this was informative. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup. Merci beaucoup.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur Desert.
And to our Ugandan colleagues, Mwebele Mutiano Baseba. Mwebele Nyo Baseba.
Robert. Thank you very much, everyone.
Everybody, we're a little beyond our hour, but Diana, we can keep the tape running, right? And
yes, absolutely.
so I would invite those who are present to pose questions. Although the formal remarks from Uganda were presented by Alan Oberlin, David is a very smart fellow, and he's on the line. So you can pose questions to him and to Desiree and to Alan. So Desiree, I would say, that was a fantastic overview. And so one thing I should have said at the beginning, which belongs there, because as you said, Africa is the future, is professional cybersecurity companies are not paying attention to Africa. And that's stupid on 2 levels. One, because Africa is such a ferment, it's where a lot of new stuff is emerging, and it's very biological in that way. And internet security really needs to be thought of as in an epidemiological way. And number two, as he said, the software is so old because it's cracked and unlicensed or whatever. It's basically the world's best petri dish for germs, cyber germs, to plant, to grow, get strong, and then they attack everybody else. Now, if that were the physical world and you were an epidemiologist, you would want to take care of that situation. So why are we not doing it in cybersecurity? And that'll be the only question I ask. And Diana, if you will then let other people pose questions.
Yeah, sure. I've been monitoring the questions, and Rebecca has mentioned some interesting articles and interesting information. I really wanted to thank Desiree, especially since it seems like your presentation may have cost a percentage of your whole country's internet bandwidth. And the presentations were great.
Thank you, Diana.
I think that's it for the, I don't see any questions coming in. I think it was excellent talk. I really enjoyed all of the information, and the similarities between what we're facing here and the differences are really interesting. I think it's for me personally, it's a great learning experience.
Well, it's been a great one for me too. 6 years ago, if someone had told me, "Hey, Robert, you're going to be working in Africa voluntarily," I'd have said, "You're crazy." I can't ever imagine going there. Gentlemen, please, don't be offended. It's just not something I was thinking of. And then my employer sent me there, and it's the most wonderful place in the world. And a point perhaps I didn't emphasize enough on the front end is Africa is chock-a-block full of really smart, really motivated people. They're almost like Soviet emigres in that regard. Africans have nothing but problems all day long. They solve a problem and they move on to the next, and they don't worry about the past. And they're just continually solving problems. And anyone who's met Soviet emigres who've moved to America and are living to America knows the personality type. They cope with obstacles and overcome them and move on. It's a tremendous resource for the world. The entire continent is like that. I sometimes describe it as a continent of 1 billion hackers struggling to get out. And gentlemen, when I say hackers, hackers in the good sense, the white hat hackers. And you are participating in a community. There are several white hat hackers on this call right now. So the bad ones, we call them crackers. And that's not you. So it's a continent full of young people, a lot of energy, a lot of intelligence, good at solving problems, and just, struggling to get into the world. Diana?
So we had some questions come in from Mercury, but isn't getting hacking problems part of the risk of using unlicensed software?
Yeah. I think that's a question for since Desiree and David are subject matter experts. But again, epidemiology, yes, it absolutely is. Desiree?
So yes, it is part of the that's what we're getting. But what I would like to stress is that people are not choosing to get unlicensed software. Most of the time, it's like they cannot afford to buy what is licensed. So it's not by choice. Maybe David, you want to add?
Yeah, thank you very much, Desiree. And I would like to appreciate the question, the person who has asked the question. Of course, every person, like if you've interacted with unlicensed software, there's always the possibility of having the back door. The back door, like when you install the software, always there is the back door to with the person who gave you the unlicensed software for whatever reason. So they've got the access to your system. So you think you're using the system when actually you are exposing your system to the guys who gave you the software or wherever you get it from. That means that actually it's innocent in that you think you're using the software when actually you're opening up your system, and if you're using it on a corporate network, you're exposing your whole network to attack. So actually it's a really bad experience you've learned from, and it's not something that to recommend. It's actually we think that it would be nice not to use unlicensed software, because every time you use a crack, the intentions of the person who provided it are very unknown. So much as in the short term you may solve your problem, in the long term you're exposing your systems.
And then there's a follow-up question, or a separate question. What ideas can you suggest to address the issue you raised that people fear to train cybersecurity defenders, for they will learn to attack? I think this was something that you brought up, Desiree.
Yes, yes. So some of the ideas that I would provide is it's really about communication, because the person that made the decision to scrap the program was not aware of, you have to teach him the risk. So it is higher risk to not have at all professional cybersecurity than to let those handful of people be able to hack the person. So you have to do a risk assessment and show the people that yes, of course, there is a non-zero chance that those trainees are going to be the one that will hack, but you have like billions of people out there in the world, because they have access to your system, that are also going to attack you. So for me, it's really about communication and talking to the right people, the people who are the decision maker, and explain to them that they rather accept that small risk to kind of toward a bigger risk. Yeah. Maybe David and Alan have something to add to that too.
Oh yeah, thank you, Desiree, for that submission. Actually, that makes a lot of sense. But yeah, just to add on to what Desiree has just presented, well, it's in my opinion, it would be very good to actually cause awareness of this cybersecurity. How can I say, like how to go about security really? Because there's a saying that goes that ignorance is one of the loopholes into an organization's security spectrum. And so if you have people that are aware or know how to go about these security tools, they'll know how to carry themselves. Of course, in a situation that you're teaching your people, or you're causing this awareness, or you're training people, there has to be a number of controls. Like there has to be a legal regime that addresses, say, cybersecurity. Because in Uganda, we have a saying, no one is above the law. So in a situation that you have a legal framework that governs the cyberspace in a given country, of course, people will know that if I'm to commit this crime, I'm either going to go to jail, or I'm going to pay this amount of money, or even do both. And so some of those deterrents would cause people to know what to do, and of course not to use it maliciously, not operating in some sort of black hat, but people would have this sort of white hat spirit. That's just something I would add onto what Desiree actually submitted.
Thank you for that. Is there anything else you would like to cover, Robert?
I would add one other thing based on my experience on the ground in Ethiopia, Tanzania, and Uganda, and especially Ethiopia and Uganda. And that is part of the problem is corporate greed on this side of the ocean. I'm just going to say that. So over there, I work with the geoscientists. David Melindy put together a team, put together a magnificent team of geoscientists with a geothermal database, georeferenced. Using, if you're doing georeferencing, locating things on Earth, you use ArcGIS, it's the world standard. Well, one seat license for ArcGIS in Africa is $10,000 US. That's a ridiculous amount of money. That's like the annual income of 25, maybe 50 Africans. At the one in the extreme poor, the people who make $1 a day, and there's a whole lot of people who live on $1 a day. So that's crazy to be charging that kind of money for one seat license, but that's the government's there. If they want to get the official ArcGIS, that's what they have to pay through a vendor over there. Well, of course, they're not going to do that. They're not going to spend $10,000 of their people's money on one license. So they're going to go with cracked. So corporate America needs to figure out appropriate licensing for the developing world, because right now the price structure is crazy and counterproductive and will harm us in the long run. It causes resentment, but as I said earlier, taking the epidemiological approach, it also ultimately presents a danger to everybody else in much the same way here in America during the pandemic, where some states refused to implement wearing masks. And guess what? COVID blew up in those states, and those people from those states went to other states, and now one state's stupidity became a problem for everybody. And cybersecurity is a lot like that. So corporate America could make life easier for itself in the long run if they would adopt appropriate pricing of products for the developing world.
Okay. I think that wraps it up today. I really want to thank everybody for coming. Thanks to all the speakers for participating. It was great to hear from all of you. For our attendees, thanks for keeping with us, and we will send out a recording. Our next webinar will be on small businesses, and as always, BCI maintains sort of an open door policy on Wednesdays for the alternate weeks. So thank you again, everybody.